What up, High and Wide fam? It's Delco Dave. I'm here with our very special guest tonight, Philly Sports Network's own Eric Reese. Eric, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for having me once again, man.
Dude, absolutely. I really appreciate you coming on, jumping on, taking a break between the, 5,000 words a day you write for Philly Sports Network. So we really appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us.
Thank you so much. Yeah, let's jump right into it. I just want to begin this whole entire thing, as cliche as this is, with my gritty coffee mug. Um, a toast to Claude Giroux, 1,000 games, 15 years, Rushmore, in my opinion, and I don't really care about anybody else's opinions of the Philadelphia Flyers. I mean, he's one of two people to play 1,000 games. It's kind of up there by default, right? So, thank you again, Claude Giroux, for on behalf of everybody.
There's a G, man. No,
All right, so
100%.
now will we go to Florida by tomorrow?
That's my favorite thing, man. It's become this like Colorado, Florida, like 2-team race. And I think the longer this drags on, the more likely it is he doesn't get traded. Like this man's sitting at home right now, hanging out with his wife and kids. You know what I mean? Watching Frozen for the 1,000th time. You know what I mean? Having dinner again. Talk about like breakfasts or going walking through the city. The longer this drags on, that man's sitting there thinking about this, dude. Chucky's gonna get a text message at some point tonight, like, you know what, man, I ain't waving it. I don't care what the offer is. I'm sticking around.
If I'm going back home and I'm watching Frozen, I'm going to Chuck and being like, "Hey, I don't care where you trade me to. I don't have a no trade clause. I don't have a no movement clause anymore. Trade me to Seattle. I don't care." But no, I'm kidding. Yeah. So I that kind of gut feeling hasn't really been erased from me either. And yeah, like the reports of Florida and Colorado, they're strong, they're prevalent. They're a lot stronger than, any report that would say that Drew is probably going to stay. Now the idea is this: is there a kind of a inner working in all this where maybe a trade is made with the idea in mind that Drew is going to come back? Like, is there like a handshake agreement that we don't know about? Because if that's the case, by all means, go wherever for the best deal and then just come back. That would be some FBI agent kind of, maneuver right there. And I don't know that's, I think it's probably too good to be true. So I don't think that's going to happen, but it'd be awesome.
Well, it's not unheard of. I think Keith Kachuk is probably the most famous one. I think he got traded from Arizona to, I want to say, St. Louis, and then re-signed back in the offseason.
Right.
But it's not unheard of that they go like a true rental. They talk about, being a rental, like a player's a rental at the trade deadline. But being like a true rental like that, like, trade it and hey, listen, like I'm not sticking around. I'm coming here. We're gonna try to win a cup, and if I don't, like I'm going back home. Like that's where I'm going. It's not it's rare. It's definitely rare, but it's not unheard of. Like, so and a player like Drew, I could absolutely see that. The downside to that, I think, is that no team's gonna want to give up a ton of value for 2.5 months of a player, regardless of the caliber of that player. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Yeah. So if you're making that kind of trade or that transition with Giroux to a contending team, and you're trying to get, I don't know, let's say Tippett, whatever prospect they want to put with Tippett, because that seems to be the hot name, even though Tippett kind of isn't favorable. Some reports say with the Flyers right now, like he's not the favorable prospect that they want to package trade around. But let's just say Tippett, because there's been a lot of heat around that name and another prospect. I think that's pretty much the icing that teams are willing to offer for Giroux. That and maybe a pick. I don't think we're going to get anything incredible because, yes, there is that option. And if we're privy to it, then you're darn right. All the other general managers are privy to the idea that they only have Giroux for maybe 20 games. Like pretty much 20 meaningful games.
And the so I'm actually I pulled it up now what you're talking about, and the interesting thing about it is that Cliff Fletcher, Chucky Two Trade's dad, was the one involved with the Keith Kachuk
Right.
trade. The
It's
one,
it's 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 interesting. It is interesting, and I don't think it's too far out of the kind of the 5 degrees of what can happen. But it's is it the number one thing? Absolutely not. But it exists, so therefore, let's talk about it, right?
exactly. Yeah. And here's the thing, especially so I think even when it came to Claude Giroux, there were some people that leading up to like, especially like last night and this trade deadline, they were all about like, oh, trade him, get whatever you can, get whatever you can. And then last night rolled around, everybody got in their feels.
Yeah.
Even the most hardcore, like, oh, trade Claude Giroux. If that was their stance all season long, even last night, like, it's like it's the captain, longest tenure game. This hurts. This hurts a little bit. It's so
Yeah.
everybody's feeling some kind of way about it when it comes to Claude Giroux leaving. And I mean, I don't know. I'm definitely more nostalgic than most, I think. And I'm sitting here going, like, hey, you know what? This guy's not going to waive the no movement clause. Like, it hasn't happened yet, so it's not going to happen. That's me sitting here. I think the more pragmatic person is sitting there probably going, no, he's going to get traded. He's going to get something back. But man, to think about it, that he'll go for just 2 months, watch him win a cup, and come back. I think that's like the ideal world a lot of fans are talking about right now.
Well, especially if he does go and win a cup, and that does actually happen, then I feel like there's even less pressure for him to say, okay, I'm going back to Philly and just doing what I want for the rest of my career. I have my cup. Like that's kind of the way that I would look at it if I was him. But I can only put myself in somebody else's shoes so far. But I will say that I did hear there was a 32 Thoughts kind of deadline edition that came out a little bit earlier today from Friedman, where he said that Giroux is like picking Florida. Like that's so it sounds like Giroux wants to be moved to Florida. That's a way that what I kind of picked up by the way that Freeman phrased it. So it sounds that he probably won't stay if it's on his decision. He probably will go try to chase that cup in Florida, and then whatever happens afterwards.
Yeah, I think I saw similar things. I think it came down to Florida, Colorado, Boston, New York, and G basically told Boston, New York to F off. And they're like, I'm not
Yeah.
going there no matter what. And then basically, if they had to choose between Colorado and Florida, I guess, I mean, both teams probably have a good shot of the run, but I mean, if you're going to, the sun, flip flops, no state income tax, like, I mean, if you have a choice to make between the two, I mean, especially with a man that controls his own destination, like, for you, if you're like, hey, listen, if somebody came to you, hey, listen, man, we're going to trade you to a different team's sports site.
Yeah.
Money stays the same. Where would you rather go, in the mountains or down to the beach? Like, and you get to keep more of your paycheck, if you go to the beach. So you get
Yeah.
beach.
Okay. So yeah, if you get to say all that, then yeah, I'm
Yeah,
saying what's the catch here? But there's no catch. So the beach, yes.
exactly. Yeah, you're going to the beach, you're getting more of your paycheck. Like, so human beings are human beings. They're going to make those decisions. That is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, just in terms of the teams that even kind of made a little bit of smoke, if we're talking about this idea where Giroux could go to another team and just come back, how awesome would it be to say, you know what, go to the Rangers, go to the Rangers so we can fleece the Rangers, and then you could come back to us, go win a cup with the Rangers, do what you like, I don't care, I'll root for the Rangers in the postseason, come back, but fleece them. That'd be
Wait,
awesome. It
wait,
would be a master plan.
wait. Almost, except for the win the cup. Yes, go to the Rangers and
Yeah,
then
yeah,
lose in the
seriously, that's the
conference
caveat.
final.
You do have to kind of cheer for the Rangers because Giroux's there. I've
Yeah,
already put out, Giroux, if he goes to whoever team he goes to, if he's traded, that's, obviously the Flyers will not be in a postseason, and the idea is to trade him to a postseason team. So that's the team I'm rooting for in a postseason.
oh yes, see, that would be the hard part for me. If he goes to Boston, if he went to Boston, New York, I have a hard time rooting. You know what I mean? I would kind of like root for Giroux to have like an epic postseason, but like the team not win. Like,
I would have to
maybe
put that pride aside, like for real. Like it would be hard, dude. I get it, but yeah, I would just be like, okay, I guess this one time is okay in my book for Boston to win.
no. So with what we're talking about, I would feel like there's no way that there's any kind of like conditions coming on the Giroux trade. Like, does any team like Florida or Colorado, if we just say it's those two, does Florida or Colorado feel confident that they'd be willing? Hey, listen, if we trade for Giroux based on the condition of re-signing him, we'll send an additional first round pick or an additional two picks or whatever. Do you think there would be a re-sign condition, given that it seems almost like a foregone conclusion, almost a conclusion that Claude Giroux is not going to re-sign with anybody? He's coming back to Philly in the offseason. What do you think the odds are that that's what he wants to do? He's coming back to Philly. And what do you think it is that the team that he's traded to tries to tack that on as a condition?
I mean, I think that's a smart tactic by another team. Like, hey, we'll sweeten the pot if you don't re-sign him. Basically, yeah, I think that would clearly work in the Flyers' favor, but maybe that's something that they're not willing to discuss because that is a part of the plan. Um, right? Like, if the Colorado Avalanche are saying, "Hey, we'll give you an extra pick if he can sign back with us," I can't hate any team for wanting to do that. It is Claude Giroux after all. Yeah, I think it's a brilliant idea for another team to kind of, or for that to be leveraged at all with another team and within a Claude Giroux trade of any kind.
I will say, specifically in relation to Colorado, I kind of don't want him to go there just because in the last week or so, the amount of like Claude Giroux hate kind of coming out of the Colorado media and the fan base, I found a little ridiculous. I put something out today, just posing a question out there in the universe, and Claude Giroux in the last 20 years, so 2002 to 2022, the last 20 years, Claude Giroux's played in one Stanley Cup Finals. That's it, just one.
Right.
The Colorado Avalanche franchise has played in zero. They've
Yeah.
played in none. But yet, the Colorado fan base and the Colorado sports media, the Avalanche sports media, likes to be like, oh, what does Claude Giroux have what it takes to go 4 rounds? Do the Avalanche have what it takes to go 4 rounds? Is the question I was asking.
I think for what it's worth, I think the Avalanche, like even last season, or should say, yeah, I felt last season even, the Avalanche, that was my team. The kind of for actually the past, I should really even go back to 2019, 2020. I really supported the Avalanche to kind of go far every single year for since like Vigneault even came in until through Yo right now. So as far as the Avalanche as a team making it, going 4 rounds, I believe they definitely have the team to do so. I think more of the questioning about Giroux from Colorado media is about how he'll fit within the lineup, the power play. Like Colorado has a power play that's one of those things where it's not broken, so don't try to fix it. Well, Giroux is a power play guy. He's a specialist even. That's what he always was in Philadelphia. Is he going to fit right in with how smooth Colorado's power play is? I know those are questions that they have, and I think that's where a lot of it comes from as far as the speculation about it. I'm not sure that it's exactly hate in terms of Giroux, but yeah, I mean, Giroux has it in him to go 4 rounds. I mean, he's only wanted to go 4 rounds for every year for 15 years. So I think when somebody asks an NHL player if they have it in him to go 4 rounds, the overwhelming majority are going to say, "Duh, yeah, absolutely." And I think that goes for Giroux and also the Colorado Avalanche in general.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, just the 4 round kind of question kind of
Yeah,
bothered me, but also like I don't think Claude Giroux is just a power play specialist as far as fitting in with the Avalanche. Like Claude's played the penalty kill the majority of his career here in Philadelphia. Right. So I think he sets up as a playmaker. He can fill in. He can make your third line just as dangerous as your second line. Like that's what he would do for Colorado, as I see. You know what I mean? Like you're not matching up, with other team. No team's going to match up with you if you're going three deep and somebody like Claude Giroux is your winger on your third line. Like you're not going to be able to compete with that. Like you're just going to set yourself apart as far as a matchup game goes. And then yeah, if he's not on the top power play, he's still going to go kill penalties for you. And then if that power play does struggle and you need to switch it up, hey, you got a guy that is second all time on the Flyers franchise in power play points, right? You can just go ahead and slide him right on there, and there you go. That's what you have right now. So I guess I was a little offended just as a Flyers fan, you know what I mean, and a Drew fan, a little fanboy, moment right here. You know
No,
what I mean?
it's absolutely fair. I mean, we all know what Giroux can do, and I think Philadelphia fans, I for sure before I really started writing and try to be as unbiased as I can be, but also like I am a Flyers fan. It's you do defend Giroux like over the past like 15 years as like, yeah, he is a superstar, but like, all the things that we've always said before. So when another team's like, yeah, does he have it in him to do this, or can he do these things? Can he fit in here? The overwhelming answer from Philadelphia is yes, because we feel that he's done it with a lot less even. I look, no matter what team gets them, it's not like they're going to just kind of remain what they are. It's going to be an upgrade. They're going to be brought to a different level of some sort. If Giroux is a third, middle six guy, like, second, third line guy for a contending team, all of a sudden that contending team has pretty much two first lines, and then their third line is a second line. And then
Exactly.
then you have your identity line that you keep in hockey, like that team that has Giroux, and if he can mesh with all the other superstars, which might work a little bit better, and maybe it does work better with Florida. I think like that's another thing. There's so much more to this trade that when you start to think of all the little cogs and how Giroux can be so effective for another team, you almost want to say we're not going to get enough back, and it's going to be underwhelming. And that's kind of I can't get that out of my brain too. That's another thing that's running in my head like rent free right now. It's just I don't know if anybody, no matter what the deal is, no matter what at all, is just going to say it was worth it. That's a good trade. Like, I think there's going to be like, hey, we got what we could back, or I wish we didn't trade them at all after that, like things like that.
100%, man. Like I think it goes into the possibility of him coming back in the offseason. Like it's almost like this trade won't be completed to the offseason, regardless of what the trade is. But if he comes back in the offseason, then it's almost like whatever we got was gravy. Because like this team's not going anywhere this year. We're not going to be in the postseason. We're not going to play nothing. So if we trade him and then he comes back in the offseason, it's almost like whatever we got at the trade deadline is just, that's gravy. That's what we got on top of it. And it's almost like fleecing a team. If we get a first round pick, a prospect, it was almost like free money. It's like monopoly money for the most part, I think, because like that Claude Giroux, a player of his stature, if he was traded knowing that you're going to get him for 3, 4, 5 more years, would bring in a huge return. You know what I mean? That's a superstar getting traded. Right. That's like Devontae Adams just got traded in the NFL. Like that's what you're talking about right there. That's the kind of reference you're looking at. But the problem is an expiring contract, and he wants to come back here. Like if Claude Giroux gets traded, he's not selling his house here. I don't think. You know what I mean? Like I don't think he's doing that.
Yeah, I mean that's always a telltale sign that everybody looks for. But I also agree, like Gavin is raised pretty much in Philadelphia. Like it's pretty much all they know. As far as I feel like maybe a family. I mean, maybe they don't know more. Maybe I'm speaking out of pocket, but Philadelphia is very familiar. That's what I'm trying to say.
Wait, same with Giroux. It's all Giroux knows. Giroux's been here since he's 17, 18 years old. You know what I mean? Like I'm 32 now, man. You know what I mean? Like
same.
Yeah, you're still a kid when you're like 18, 19 years old. You know what I mean? Like I'm a completely different person than when I was 18, 19 years old, 17 years old. So like Giroux grew up here in Philly too. I mean, yes, he had his childhood, but he became a man here in Philly.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like I almost in my mind, just kind of understanding the outer shell of his journey. I can only imagine him either wanting to live in Philly or pretty much where he came from, which is like pretty much Ottawa.
Ottawa, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, and he's obviously not going to become a senator. Like, so yeah, probably going to keep his house in Philly, stay local as he can, and then whenever later on, maybe he goes to Ottawa, but that's a personal thing away from hockey. I honestly yeah, I don't see a point where he sells his house and there's a telltale sign that he's moving on from Philadelphia permanently. Um, so part of that could be a reason why a return might be a little underwhelming. Other teams might understand that, and that's the hard bargain we're battling right now.
Yeah,
And there, the reports that are saying that the trade isn't really close, but everything is so fluid. I mean, what does that really mean? And it's everything's up in the air, and it could happen, and it could not happen. It's pretty much it's the definition of uncertainty.
yeah, yeah. I think Terrian had a he put something out that I think like described this situation perfectly. He was like, yeah, I have sources, all over it. I talked to two of them this morning, both very dialed in. One told me Colorado locked, done deal. It's just waiting for the paperwork to be signed. The other one told me Florida, done deal, just waiting for the paperwork to be signed. And that's just where we're sitting right now.
Right.
And I think the no movement clause is a bigger deal than some people think. I truly think that Claude Giroux has given like a 75, 80%, like, yeah, no, I'll sign it, just get the deal and works. But I think there's still part of him. And again, maybe this is just me being a fanboy, but I think there's part of him going, you know what? I don't know. I don't know. And
I think that's the hopeful part of the fan and all of us is kind of that part where he's like holding out saying, man, I want to be the most Philadelphian person of all time and finish my career play. You do have that, right. Like we all do. I mean, I'm sitting at the presser last night in his 1,000th game going, yeah, like I wish he just walked in like the Wolf of Wall Street. He's like, I'm not leaving, I wish he just did that. Or even better, I wish during the ceremony it was just announcing a contract extension. That would have been pretty awesome.
Oh man,
but but no, I mean, I do believe that this move is going to happen, and it's not going to be the only move that's going to happen. I believe there's going to be some workings around with defensemen and maybe a goaltender for some other picks as well.
Yeah, so all right, so you brought up some other moves. That's a pretty natural segue right there. So, but opposite of Claude Giroux, anything besides Claude Giroux,
I mean,
what do you think is the most likely move that happens, Eric?
Like most likely, well, I think we all, by we all, I meant pretty much, all of Flyers Twitter at one point, where it's like Ristolainen is going to be the guy, right? And then the contract that the number that we all saw, the 6.3 or whatever it was. That's what we all saw at first, and then we saw that also that Ristolainen, the report was like declined that, and then it turns around and it's 5.1. I'm like, wait a minute. So if I'm following the narrative and I'm reading the tea leaves, that tells me that and I mean, maybe this is just, I don't know, maybe no one else thinks like this and I'm the only one, but if you turn down 6.3 per one report, that tells me you're still testing the market. Mm-hmm. If you came back to Philadelphia and said, I'll take the 5.1, that means there was no market.
None.
Right, so we were bidding with ourselves and we only took $300K off the table. Like that to me shows that, okay, there wasn't a market out there and we still overpaid. It's not financially responsible in a flat cap era. And I think we would have been better off moving on. But that's what Stinger, you saw earlier from PSN, he was like, "Oh, his unhealthy obsession with Ristolainen." Yeah, I do. Here's things. There are absolutely things I like about Ristolainen. That when that goal happened to tie the game 4-4 against the Predators, and he just like a runaway freight train down the ice into the offensive zone. I want that to happen more consistently because I know that's his game, and I know that's what we signed up for, basically. The blue line, I know he's got a booming cannon of a shot. I wish he was utilized a little bit better in Philadelphia. I wish it didn't take that long to put him in power play situations and see what he has. There's just things in the defensive zone that always have terrified me. So I think that was the beginning trade. Of course, that never happened. So now we're going to talk, obviously about what trades could happen. Braun is at the top of the list, I feel. 1.8 mil for a veteran who was supposed to be on a third pair by design and went to the top pair and played pretty well.
Norris
Everybody
trophy
said it
candidate.
perfectly. He's not going to be the main priority, but he's going to be a heck of a depth priority for a team that needs it on the defensive side.
Oh, for sure. And if Stinger, if you're watching, by the way, man, like March 29th is still open, dude. Like if you just want to hit me up, slide into my DMs, dude. We'll get you on here, man.
We'll get him on.
Absolutely. But no. So when it comes to Ristolainen, man, I'm not gonna lie. I'm almost here for Ristolainen more for the narrative when it comes to Risto versus Sanheim. Because, oh my God, there has not been a defensive pair in the history of the NHL that's divided the fan base more than Sanheim versus Ristolainen. And they play together. They're on the ice together. They play together all the time. And they seem like they help each other. But this fan base is hell bent on being like either Team Ristolainen or Team Sanheim. And I don't think it has to be that way. I kind of want, if next season, if they end up playing together like the whole season, I plan on having a bit where I'm just going to hold up a chart, you know what I mean? Explaining while they're working so well together in Sharpie, like my own chart. That's all it is. That's all I want. But Sanheim, Ristolainen, plus winning. Well, that's all I want.
It's just, there's been times this season where I sat back and said, this is going to rule. This pairing is going to rule. And then there's been other times I'm going, please trade him. You talk about black and white, there is no gray area. And that's how it is for me. I mean, dude, I'm always going to be rooting for the guy. I mean, he's clearly like somebody that the team loves in the locker room. Scouts really love his game and what he can bring. It is a little unfair to say this is what he is as a Flyer when the whole defensive shift with Ellis kind of ruined a lot of things.
Yeah.
I mean that part's true. Yeah, I mean, let's see what he's got, obviously, with a healthy defense. That kind of, messed up the entire team is the team health all season. But in terms of Sanheim, actually, before I talk about Sanheim, I think a reason why everything is so bipolar about Ristolainen is everybody can appreciate the eye test with his how physical he is. And then you look at the metrics and it tells more of the story over the game. And, there's that narrative. And that's where everybody's, he's basically the analytics on one side of the ring and then the eye test on the other side of the ring. And it's a Royal Rumble. But, pretty much. But, I mean, I've had my hand in that too. So I try to stay out of it anymore. But, but with Sanheim, I'm starting to believe in my heart that Sanheim really is the right answer at the top line left defense.
Well, okay, so two things. First, Ristolainen, I think was he number one overall? He was a high pick.
He was. I can look that up while we're going.
Whatever he was, I know he had to have been at least top 5. But Ristolainen, I think he suffers from kind of a bias that he didn't live up to the expectation of what his draft status was. You know what I mean? When players are drafted at a certain level, you expect this game-changing, franchise-altering kind of player across all sports. Whether it's Pat Burrow kind of suffered from this for Philadelphia for the Phillies too. He was part of a World Series winning team, but he was never quite the guy he was supposed to be because he was number 1 overall. For Buffalo, Ristolainen was drafted. I think. Do you have it up already?
It was 2013 8th overall.
8th overall. Okay, so top 10 pick. So he has this. He was supposed to be a top 10 pick, and he never quite became that guy. Which but he's still a good player. You know what I mean? He's
right.
He's not trash, but he gets treated like he's trash because he's not living up to the number 8th overall expectation. So
it is the hype. It is the hype.
Yeah, that's kind of
I agree with what you're saying, because if you really think about if you looked at the numbers, right, and you just unattach everything from hype, from the thirst of wanting a big name in the off season coming into this season, you look at the numbers, and then would you say, okay, we're going to trade, what was it, a Hag, a first, and a second, I believe.
I want to say second or third. Yeah, so
something like that. You wouldn't look at the numbers and say, pull it, go for that trade. So I think a lot of what we paid for, what we did kind of buy into the hype and all the other he should be like this. We looked at the whole kind of outer shell. And I think the part that's sour with a lot of people who are on the negative side, kind of like how I kind of stay on that side, is the price that we paid. I don't believe that there's a time where we can trade Ristolainen and we would get anything close to that return. I think it was an overpay just upon the trade itself. And it's kind of one of those things where I'm weary about, okay, I saw that trade go down. So how will other trades go down the deadline? And that has, a lot of walls up, even about, going back to Giroux a little bit.
Yeah, so I mean, the Ristolainen trade was probably the one that was could be or is most criticized from what Chuck Fletcher did. But I mean, injuries aside, like had the Ryan Ellis trade worked out, the Ristolainen trade would have been looked at in a different lens.
And that's absolutely true and absolutely agreeable. Like I do believe that if Ellis is healthy, my tune would then be okay, like maybe we did give a tad too much up, but no one's talking about it. Like no one's really talking about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If Ristolainen's our number 4 defenseman, doing what he does, you know what I mean, making plays, and honestly, I think he helped elevate Sanheim's game. Regardless of what people say on the charts or the numbers or analytics, like Sanheim is comfortable. Sanheim feels confident because Ristolainen's there. Maybe it's because everybody's going to blame shit on Ristolainen, so Sanheim can just play his game. Like, regardless of the mistakes, any mistakes Sanheim can make, they're just going to blame it on Ristolainen anyway, regardless of who's making what play. And I don't know if that's actually what he's thinking, but those two actually seem to play well together. They seem to mesh. They seem to complete each other. Like, so if Ristolainen is your 4th defenseman, Ellis is your number 1, Provorov's number 2, Sanheim's 3. Like that's a legit top 4 right there. You know what I mean?
It could be. So what makes that in my mind, aside from my general wariness of Ristolainen, is it's really Provorov at that point. Is the regression of Provorov. 2019, 2020, I had an article that I published saying that he was a top 20 NHL defenseman. I believe that in my heart of hearts. I defended that, and I still would go back to 2019 and 2020 and say, no, I don't regret writing that. Now I do, because it's like it's
hindsight being 2020.
Yeah, like that aged like milk. Pretty much. Like it did. It's one of those things where you look back and you're saying, okay, this guy is this. Turns out Niskanen was that. And that's I think a narrative where, okay, if that's an unfair narrative, then show me. Like that, and I know it's like, okay, well, he played with Braun last year. It wasn't really a defense. All you did was add Gustafsson, which is not a defenseman. I know, and I hate. You know what? You want to talk about something I dislike more than Ristolainen was Gustafsson, but we're not going to talk about that because that's over with. But anyway,
it's not pertinent. It's not pertinent, Eric.
Yeah, no, it's fair. But anyway, so with Provorov, the decline of his play, and we all looked at him to be basically the core member of the defense. It's glaring that he needs a supplement player to balance him out, and that's shouldn't be the 1A of your defense. I mean, if anything, and it's insane because I'm actually about to agree with I think something that Dave Scott said, but I think that Provorov is a core player, right? And we've seen Provorov. And we've all said, okay, that's a young, guy that we got to build the defense around. That's something that's been said before. That's what you mean by core. But when Scott said that Ellis is a core player, you kind of look at Provorov and you're like, well, he on his own isn't really towing the line on defense. He does need Ellis. Oh my God, is he kind of right when Ellis is a core player? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'm just kind of, have cabin fever. I don't know.
Well, I mean, when it comes to Provorov, it's such a weird situation because it looks like it's all right there. When you watch Provorov play, there are times you see all the tools. Like Nick Lidstrom was the comparison to Provorov when he came out. And you can see it when you watch him play sometimes, right. But then it just disappears. And it has to be in his head. I have to think it's a mental thing. It has to be a mental or an emotional thing. Because physically, it looked like you see he sees the game the right way. He plays the game the right way. Like you're seeing these things happen. I don't know if it's a confidence issue, if it's a belief in the self. Like I don't know what it is, but Provorov should be, in my mind, like a top 5 defenseman in this league, like today, like right
Yeah,
here, right now. That's what Ivan Provorov should be, especially after what we saw from him. And I can't for the life of me figure out what it is. I've heard some things that, the criticism from the fan base and the media gets to him, that he
yeah.
feels uncertain. Like who knows how true that is or isn't, but man, like you would think this guy has what it takes, because everything on the ice shows that it is. So in my mind, it has to be a mental thing.
Yeah, I'm, not one to really say too much because I don't know. But at the same time, it's like you wonder if it is something, there's some sort of distraction because it doesn't seem like he's played like himself really since the pause of 2019-2020, right? Like
Mhm.
last season, it was kind of like everybody on the Flyers, down to even Carter Hart. He had his worst season. It was just, woe is me, COVID sucks, blah, 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 quarantine. That's kind of the lull and dread and feeling that this season presented itself with, right? So this year, I don't know, like if there's something that's in his head about what the team, it's losing. Yeah, it's losing hockey. It's some of the worst hockey that I've witnessed in my life. It's probably some of the worst hockey that's happened in franchise history in terms of losing streaks and things like that. But at the same time, I do see other players, whether they're recalls or whether they're players that are dressing on opening night that are competing at a higher level, and you got to wonder what is the frustration of losing, kind of combating against Provorov. I sometimes see it. I see it at, like, when he takes to the podium at pressers, and yeah, everybody's kind of really bitter. Everybody's kind of like down, and morale's not good when you're losing. But particular players stick out a little bit more than others. And Yo's definitely commented a little bit more often, a little bit kind of slighted towards Provorov in his comments. There's things like that I think about, and I kind of notice, and I'm saying maybe there is something that is a little bit deeper to all this with Provorov, and it's got to be figured out. And if a trade makes more sense than anything that was linked to Sanheim, I mean, yeah, I would kind of like to see what we can get for Provorov, testing the market now with other transactions that have happened. I'm sure that Provorov would have a pretty nice pull to him.
Especially with the term on his contract. He got 4 years left, I believe. So,
Yeah.
something like that, you're getting a guy for term. And especially if you believe in him hitting his ceiling, if you're a team that, hey, we're going to acquire a guy that's going to slide in as our 4th or 5th defenseman for this year, maybe next year, but we believe in our developmental staff, we can make this guy a real player again. Like, there's something you can get right there. Now, you mentioned Yo. So, what do you think about Yo's future? Is he a lame duck right now, dead man walking as far as the season goes? Does he have any shot of coming back?
As a head coach, I don't think so. Now, I like Yo. I should disclaimer all of this by saying I like Yo, and I'm not gonna like sit there and say like uh, there's been anything like this bad or blah blah blah, because I don't really think he's had control of much. He's kind of been placed in the position, so it's kind of unfair to say, oh, like Yo can't get this team to play for him. It's really not his team,
He was interim head coach. There's no way you can just
Right,
like place on him. Like he wasn't running it from training camp, so like he came into a tough position.
right.
Well, there's only so much he can do. So absolutely, you're right, 100%. It's just only so much he can do.
But he's got a lot of recalled players, and he's got a lot of things kind of trending in the right direction. And honestly, with how transparent he is at press conferences, I kind of really admire that about Yo. And maybe that's just an interim head coach thing because they don't really have too much to lose. Maybe that's what it is. But
They're just like,
he's been
screw it. You
so
know what? I don't give a shit.
transparent.
I'm not sticking around. So like,
Yeah, like maybe that's what it is. But he definitely is very transparent about, like, guys like Morgan Frost, which is a hot topic. What are you going to do with him? He's an RFA coming up, things like that. He's been very transparent about, clearly we've already talked about Provorov. He's been transparent about everything really with Giroux. And this, and as pressing and as hot of a topic that is, and as many questions as they have to field about Giroux, he's never once shied away. He's always just kind of been like, this is what it is. This is what we understand. All the questions that we've had about, injury statuses like Couturier, Ellis all season long. And it's just been, hey, well, this is what we have. He's, close or he's not close. We hear that all the time. I don't think at any point lied to the fan base and try to, talk through things and kind of cryptic ways. He's been very transparent. I love that about him. I don't think he's a candidate to be a head coach. I think he would be fine, and I would be absolutely fine if he just resumed his role as an assistant. Like, I really think he has a place in Philadelphia where it's valuable, because I saw younger guys that are going to be the future of. They say aggressive retool. Throw it out the window. It's not. Just rebuild. This is what it's going to be, and Yo might be a pretty awesome voice for that rebuild.
I will say, before we touch on the rebuild, retool, what we're gonna do, I will say I genuinely appreciate anybody in the NHL with some personality. It's one of the
Right.
things I've touched on a few times, that like hockey players in general, it's just such a buttoned up, kind of stuffy, kind of atmosphere all the time. Anybody that, like, I love Twitterella just because that dude always has passion. Like the dude, he's like a superstar just for being a coach, because he has emotion.
Yeah.
Like I think I just
fair.
love to see that stuff. And you're right with Yo, like that he's honest, he's passionate about it, he lays it right out there, and that's something you appreciate, man. Or at least something I appreciate. I can't speak for everybody, but like I would love to see some more emotion, some more personality from just players, coaches, everyone in general. So it doesn't relate to on the ice. I mean, maybe it does, or into the locker room, whatever. But from a fan perspective, and simply a fan, not media, nothing else, just straight up from a fan perspective, I love to see a guy that has some emotion and, puts some stuff out there, speaks his mind, even if he has to backtrack 24 hours later, like Yo had to recently. But like put some stuff out there, say it, that's something I like to see. Then as far as like the rebuild, retool goes, I am full blown anti rebuild, anti retool. I don't care what we have to do. If it has to be a Frankenstein monster, I couldn't care less. But I'm done with it. We were rebuilding for 6 years under Hextall. I can't rebuild again.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? That's
Eric. I can't rebuild again, man. I can't wait till I'm 45 to rebuild to compete. I miss the Holmgren. I miss the Holmgren days.
Eagles.
The Holmgren days.
I miss Philadelphia Eagles. When time is a thing, so even Philadelphia has to win the Super Bowl. Like, that's kind of how I look at things. Rebuild, man. If you do it right, it does well for. I mean, geez, longer than what you expected. So that's the best way to do things. And the only way that you're going to find yourself another Giroux is if they accidentally let go of a prospect for Giroux that turns into a Giroux, which cross your fingers. Anyway, and then or you draft the guy, and that's how it goes. You gotta nail your picks, and that's really what we're hoping amongst Fletcher and the guys that we have in prospects and loaned elsewhere right now, and also the future. But I think rebuild's the best way to go. I think throwing money and whatever and seeing if it sticks. That's I think we saw that with Fletcher in Minnesota. I'm afraid of that too, because they were always at least strapped to the cap. And before this season, well, we were pretty strapped to this is the most cap space we've had before, in this all season coming into this one.
Well, yeah, the JVR offseason, when we signed JVR, we had a bunch of money and we spent it on JVR. But yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. But that's what we spent our money on.
Yeah, we did that.
But so episode 1 of HW at Night, we had Bill Meltzer on, and we mentioned the rebuild to him, and he goes, well, if you're gonna do a real rebuild, burn it down, tear it down, and build it back up, yes, it's going to take 8 to 10 plus years. And me and Jack from High and Wide Radio were like, oh my God, no, we're not trying to do 8 to 10 years.
You gotta. I hate to say that because the thing to me that's more important than any trade, any draft pick, any acquisition that we can make before the next off season or whatever is getting the coaching right and developing players correctly.
Oh, I'm
So
with you.
yeah, I believe that once you do that and you care about that more, then a rebuild kind of take care of itself because then you just have a fluid thing in motion.
Yo, I agree with that 110%.
Yeah.
I will co-sign that every day of the week for you. Absolutely. Get the coaching right, get the development right. But to get that right, I don't think it requires a burn it down rebuild. Like that's where I differ. I
Well, I
think
think the burn it down idea um, passes the players and it starts with the front office. So to me, that is sort of the burn it down is kind of like coach development, whatever it may be. You can keep the roster mostly and see what you can make of it with the new staff and then go from there. That's kind of part of the rebuild, but that's also year one out of what, Meltzer probably accurately would say is an 8 to 10 year.
so, but here's what I think. So if you focus on the coaching staff and if you get the coaching hire right that pushes the right buttons, you can bypass a lot of that rebuild. Like
Fair.
like we brought in Laviolette. Like Stevens wasn't making it work. He got fired. We brought in Lavi, and all of a sudden, he found the right way to push the buttons for that roster we already had. I think there are pieces here already. Like this team can compete. Now, with any professional sports team, injuries are a caveat. What is Ellis when he comes back? Is Hayes going to be able to stay healthy the whole time, play to the
Right.
level he is? Injuries are a caveat. But if you get the right coach in here, bring the right coaching staff, I feel like there's no reason this team can't, immediately compete for a playoff spot. So that'd be the first thing. Right coaching staff puts us in playoff spot contention. The next part would be like, what personnel moves do you do to elevate that from just competing for a playoff spot to being a true contender? And can you do that? So if we assume the playoffs, the coaching staff hire is correct, if we say we get the right coaching staff in here, we're going to elevate this team. We're pushing the right buttons. Now we're a bubble team. What do you think needs to happen from a player personnel perspective to elevate us to a contender status?
Are we talking about hypothetically if next year we're a bubble team?
Hypothetically,
Okay.
the coaching, we wipe out the coaching staff we have. We bring in the correct, we're even going to assume not just we're a bubble team, but that we got the right coaching staff to get us to a bubble team. So the
Right.
coaching hire is good. We got an A+ on the coaching hire. So this is just player personnel stuff right now. What player or players are we missing to be true contenders?
I mean, working from the bottom up, I really like our fourth line. I think if anything's happened this year, we found a bottom six. Because there's been a plethora of different prospects, recalls that can fit in, that are getting their development to maybe be recalled next season, and also the injuries. And when you get those players back, that's also your natural, top nine. So that fourth line and the third line, I think what we have even tonight is a close enough representation. I mean, probably not Willman. You probably have Lawton back in there if everything's correct in the bottom six of the forwards. Um, you probably do have Wade Allison out there, taking more ice time, which agreeable as he should. Um, it's hard to say what this team needs because we don't have a good barometer as to what the team is. It's do you call next year to have wisdom or a Bobby Brink some prospect? Are they now like coming up to the Flyers next year? Do we know if that's going to be the direction of the team and we kind of start doubling down on, hey, let's see what we have in this system, what we don't have? I don't think that's going to be as aggressive on the forward front as it is maybe defensively next year. Like York will definitely be called up. Um, I still always like to see what Zamula could offer. I wish he got a little bit more ice time, especially in a lost season like this. Um, when I look at what will help the team contend, obviously you do need a probably a left winger, like a top six. You need a real top six. Like you probably want something that's going to be a scorer. You need a real scorer. We always have a bunch of playmakers That's absolutely a fair crime. I mean, Atkinson and Farabee are probably our go-to goal scorers offhand right now. Um, I think Hayes will probably. I think he's showing me right now that he's skating with some gusto. That's what I saw since he's returned. To me, that says that he's healthier than what I could have expected him to be even this season. Couturier, I think a lot of people are worried about, oh, he's been injured, all this, but he's still a very, very talented player. And looking at how this team is 5-on-5, you can see where it's missed because there's not many periods, even tonight, where the Flyers didn't really win many periods or in general this month. But tonight they didn't win any periods against Ottawa. If Couturier is on the ice, you probably win that game. I think there's enough of a difference right there. Like there's so many things. I don't. It's very hard to say what will help contend, but obviously, uh, you know, I think a right-handed defenseman because the right side on the defense is not sturdy, and I think a center winger that can score, whether that's left wing, probably left wing because I think we're drying up on the left side.
Well, I mean, so you mentioned Couturier, and I think when it comes to injuries, you need to wonder about some things sometimes. So like the way I try to view things when it comes to guys coming back from injury, right? You don't want to assume 100% is how I feel about it.
That's fair.
You want them to be 100%. You do. You don't want to assume it. So the way I think about it is like, what would 90% of Sean Couturier be, or 85% of Sean Couturier be? If we had 90%, Sean Couturier at 90% tonight, would we have won that game? I'm with you. I think we would have. If we had Sean Couturier at 90%, we would have. The man played on a torn ACL and scored a hat trick. Right. Like the man's proven to be tough enough. So yeah, if something is holding him back a little bit and he's not exactly what he has always been, 90% of Sean Couturier is still a number 2 center in this league, in my opinion, right?
Yeah.
So that's what, and the same thing should be applied to Ellis. Hey, listen, Ryan Ellis has been a all-star. He's been a very good to great defense in most of his career. So if he comes back at 90% of what Ryan Ellis is or has been, he's still a very good defenseman most of the time. Like that's like so that's kind of how I feel about it. Like that's what you're getting back without giving up any assets. You're getting, a very good number 2 center, a good to very good top 4 defenseman with 0 assets given up. So to me, like I said, and that should be the baseline, the bottom, right? If they do come back at 100%, great. That's gravy. That's even better. We're ahead of the game then at that point. So like I said, for me, I don't like hearing rebuild, retool, because I think there are pieces in place, even if you assume a little bit of the worst.
Right.
So that's where I'm at. So for me personally, I want a high-end skilled forward that can put this team over the top. I want this team to be dangerous. I want people to be nervous about this team when we come in and they go, how are we going to stop this guy? And they're going to devote attention to this guy, whether it's a winger, center. But hey, listen, we need to stop this guy. And once you make teams do that and focus on one player, that's when it opens it up for everybody else. That's when all of a sudden Cam Atkinson, is left alone or left one-on-one. That's when nobody's paying attention to him. He can play his game because so much attention is put on somebody else. So I would like, for me personally, I would like to see them go out there top 3, first line forward, throw money at it. If it's Johnny Gaudreau, let's do it. But go after whoever you can to make this team dangerous and make opponents nervous.
I mean, Philip Forsberg is another one that I've heard his name tossed around, and that's a guy that I've watched a few years now and said, man, I'd really like him to be in orange and black.
Absolutely.
I wonder, but there's a lot. So in terms of restricted free agents that you can also shop around with in this offseason, what's too much for the Flyers to give up in terms of maybe striking, interest with a young player? Because I see some guys, just by looking at Cap Friendly right now, I mean, this is all just like taking a really quick look and moving on. But you got guys
we like to dream though, Eric. We like to dream. So let's dream a little bit. Let's do some dreaming.
I got like a Brock Bozer, right?
Ooh, I like Brock.
like Brock Boser, like he's a restricted free agent. You probably, in all likelihood, will resign. I mean, obviously, but let's just go into this like little dream world where they're taking offers. He doesn't, just sign that tender and go with them immediately, or whatever that contract extension is. Um, what kind of assets you got? Because you're clearly good up assets for signing rights. What do you think that costs the Flyers to get probably a player with an upside of being a top six for probably the next 8 years?
What did they give up for Dan Hamhuis
It
back
was
in
like three. It wasn't like three first. Hold on, that was like it wasn't three first. That was
no.
Devontae Adams.
Yeah.
No, it was basically Devontae Adams in a trade. I'll tell you that.
Because he was headed to free agency, and we paid up to talk to him first. And man, I don't know, but basically, I want to say
I'm gonna look that up for you.
yeah, was the one in the 3 or something like I forget what it was we gave up to talk to him for like 4 weeks. But I don't value draft picks like a lot of everybody else does because you have no idea what they are. Like they're an unknown to me. So I feel like you can sell those draft picks, and who knows what they're going to be. So give them up. Like you have no idea unless they're a top 3. And even then, we've seen it with Nolan Patrick and JVR. Even if
Right.
they're top 3, you still miss. So I value draft picks way less than that. Probably the rest of the high and wide staff, to be honest with you, and probably way less than the rest of Flyers Twitter. Like I'm like, dude, I'm like, just sell them. Like people want to value these things, just give them away. Like,
Well, the thing with Giroux is an idea of trading and getting picks with these prospects is if somebody were to say, "Hey, I need a high end guy," or "I need, I need a first round pick," right? Like that's a big thing. 2023, it's a loaded draft first round pick. I understand that part, and obviously, a player that you can get that's a maybe close to NHL ready prospect is not going to be as good as that first round pick that everybody assumes. But what if it was like is a prospect at some point kind of supplement for a pick? Like that's kind of how I started thinking about some of these trade packages as well. Like how valuable is a second round conditional first if that was a thing, or a first or a second in general?
no, I mean, so for the most part, anything outside of the first round is pretty much a lottery pick. In any draft, to be honest with you, like I at one point a couple of years ago, I went through and like went through all the Flyers drafts for like 10 years, and they had players from the second round, just the second round is all I was looking at. The combined total over a decade's worth of draft picks was like 112 games played in a Flyers uniform for a decade's worth of second
Wow.
round. Yeah, I don't have it on me right now. I'd have to go back and do it again. But yeah, so it's not exactly like second round picks are hitting for the Flyers. Now, where I do value draft picks is if you identify a draft that is so deep, has so much talent, and there are so many players, or at least one or two high end players, that you want to control that draft. And if
Right.
your goal is to control that draft and you want to acquire as many draft picks in that particular draft, like I don't want just like spread them out 22, 23, 24. No, no, no. If you go, hey, listen, the 2023 draft, that's where it's at. There's so much talent. There's so much high end talent. There's so much we can do if we get involved in this draft. This is where we can move. Then go ahead and get every single pick you can get and then make you the goddamn godfather of that draft.
Yeah.
Have 6, 7 first round draft picks. So when that draft rolls around, everybody's coming to you to kiss the ring, and you're making moves that you want to make. You want so and so? All right, come here.
You had
That's what
6
you're
and 7
doing.
first round picks, you'd be a playoff team that year probably, Jesus.
No, that's an exaggeration, but you
No,
get
no,
what
I
I'm
get
saying.
you.
Yeah,
I
you're
100% get that, yeah.
controlling the draft is what you. If you're going to dictate, if you're going to get draft picks, make it so that you dictate the whole top end of that draft. You're going to control the first 30, 32, 45 picks. You own that right there. If anybody wants to do it, it comes through you because you own 3, 4, 5, 6 picks in those first 45.
I mean, So okay, and doing and the idea of doing that, obviously, like I agree. You want to somehow finesse, even if it's a 3-team trade, to facilitate this Giroux to whoever. We need a first round pick for 2023 back. I think that's just kind of a ground rule that we should be walking into this trade with. Um, in that scenario, how comfortable is the fan base watching bad hockey next year in a kind of like, well, we also want our pick to probably be a lottery pick for the 2023 draft? Because if you're going to put the kind of in the kind of value into a first round like that, then you're kind of taking the process route from the 76ers. I mean, hopefully more tongue in cheek, but then again, maybe not.
No, I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, the model I'd be modeling it after, or who I'd be modeling it after, is Howie Roseman. Howie Roseman, I think, gets a bad rep in Philadelphia, but the man is great when it comes to asset management.
Right.
The Carson Wentz pick didn't work out, but he did it the right way. Like, he traded veteran players, draft picks, to acquire more draft picks for a certain draft, and then use those same draft picks to move up in that draft to get a guy he thought was going to be franchise altering. And as much as you hate Carson Wentz, like, Philly can't stand him anymore, the man had us at 11-3, or you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, the man, he was on his way to an MVP campaign, and we won the Super Bowl that year. So Howie Roseman is the kind of model I see when it comes to draft asset management. Now, as far as picking players or his veteran acquisitions, we can absolutely kill him all day long. I got it. But the man knows how to get draft picks and move them around when it comes to a particular draft. And that's what I'd like to see the Flyers do. Now,
Right.
as far as the Flyers fan base watching the team suck again next year.
No, they're not ready. And I understand that because I'm not ready.
I'm not ready for that. So these last 5, 6, 7 years have truly had me missing the Paul Holmgren days. I mean, dude.
Oh my God, I was thinking the same thing the other day, and I didn't want to be the one who said it.
Dude, say what you want about the man, dude. That guy wanted to win every year, and he did what he thought was right to win that season. He's like, next season be damned. I don't give a shit. 7 years, sign the guy. Let's go win a Stanley Cup right now. Dude, and we were in the playoffs every year.
We had the Al Davis of hockey.
Dude, exactly. Yeah. I mean, honestly, to me, I thought it was great, dude. We were spoiled. We made the conference semifinals regularly, a couple conference finals appearances, Stanley Cup. Like, I don't know what else you want from it. Like, I thought the guy was a great GM. He gets killed because he put us in salary cap hell. I don't give a shit, dude. We were winning. All the time.
It was always very entertaining hockey, and then everything got a lot more safer and calculated. And I think that identity kind of grew with what we also see on the ice now. I mean, you're not wrong. I think, kind of, for a lack of a better term, kind of going balls to the wall it is very a homegrown maneuver. And I think Fletcher tried it this year, and every single which way the bottom fell out.
Yeah.
That's all right. If you were to, just like me, I said this Flyers team is a playoff team before the puck dropped on day one. I looked at the paper, I looked at this team, and I said, I think this will be probably a third or fourth seed in the Metro, but they'll be a playoff team, and then that's a foundation to get us out of this 2020, 2021 funk back into some normalcy of the NHL season. Maybe, things are kind of shining on Philadelphia. Nope, not at all. We were the most injured team for most of the season, and it's like if every fan in the warehouse was on, and then there was just poop hitting it everywhere. Like, it was the worst. It's like it was just it's no one could get away from it. Just misery. 13 games, 10 games. Jesus. So you're watching all this, and you're saying to yourself, okay, it's a miserable time to watch this team, but we know this team on paper isn't this team, right? Like, it's not like this season does not reflect what Fletcher tried to build. And that's a fair assessment. Absolutely. Because we saw this team for the first 10 games, which was more of an accurate representation of what was, constructed for this. And this team was pretty, solid this first 10 games. We were like 6-2-2 or something like that.
Yep. Yeah. No, we
So
look
yeah,
good.
like it was something close, and so you're like, okay, well, you get a barometer, 10-game barometer. All right, well, we can roll with this. We can do well, and then it just boom. Okay, you don't have Ellis. You got Sealer. Sealer's wore out his welcome. Then you got Connaughton, and that's not much, And then you got York playing on the opposite end of his, which, by the way, that's something I'm going to be touching on. York on the right side is actually, to me, I like it. I think he's better right defenseman on the third pair than natural right defenseman. So, I mean, when I look at York out there, I see a guy that now, by hook or by crook, can play both sides of the ice. So,
I mean, when it comes to York, I just want him on the ice with the big club all the time anyway. Like I don't care what the reasoning is or what the excuse is. Just put the goddamn guy on the ice.
yeah.
With the Flyers. Like, you know what I mean? Left side, right side, play him at wing. I don't give a shit. Just get the guy on the damn ice. Like, I'm tired of sending him back.
It's night and day watching transition into the offensive zone when York has the puck. It's just silky smooth of his skating. So when I see him go down the ice, and there's the times where he kind of like back skates and he actually looks at the players behind him and how things are going, I'm like, wow, here's a guy that's aware of how to set up in the ozone. This is a foreign language. Like Philadelphia, have you ever seen a clean entry before? Like Jesus, like so you do say that, because I've been sitting there going like clean entries are miserable. They said it tonight. Philadelphia has not been that great on clean entries, and then you see York doing it. You're like, yeah, just get the puck to this guy every time. Yeah. Let him play 60 minutes. Who cares?
Yeah, let's just let him do his thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I'm very, very excited. I was very excited about York towards the tail end of 2019, 2020, 2021 season, towards the tail end when he started getting playing time. And, the more that he's up regularly now, I can't wait for him just to be a day one starter next year.
Oh, I hope so. So, but all right. So Eric, we're over the hour mark here, pushing hour 10. So listen, I'm going to give you the floor, man. The floor is yours for the next little bit. Hype up whatever you want to, talk about whatever you want to. Any projects you have, it's all yours, man.
Yeah, pretty much. It's all the same sort of things. Follow me on Twitter, Eric Reese PSN. It's the same on like Instagram. It's just probably going to be more photos of articles that you can read on my Twitter. I don't know. I don't really use social media that well. I'm kind of identifying myself as a boomer, so you don't have to do it for me at this point. But yeah, I mean, articles pretty much all the time. My PSN staff is pretty wonderful. Follow along at Philadelphia SN is the handle, but Philly Sports Network.
Awesome. Yeah. Eric puts out articles like 7 a day, basically.
I try to put out as much as I can, as long as it makes sense. And sometimes that's even debatable. So that's fine. As long as you're talking about it, I want to talk about it too.
Yeah. I was nervous that he'd even have time to jump on here for a little bit because of how much he puts out there. So definitely, follow him, read his stuff. As far as HW at Night goes, we got a couple nice shows coming up. Our big headliner is going to be Darren McCarty's coming on after the Flyers Red Wings game next week, which will be a good time. So definitely come on, hang out, check us out. HW at Night, High and Wide Hockey. I'm Delco Dave for a very special guest, Eric Reese from Philly Sports Network. Everybody have a great night. Thanks for hanging out with us. We really appreciate it.